Welcome back, subscribers. In this video, I want to talk about why I let go of the Lumix S9. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a bit, you know that I've been looking for compact cameras to combine with compact lenses, and the S9 definitely fit the compact piece of that. But what didn't fit over time were a couple of compromises that the manufacturer decided to do that a lot of people have tried to overlook and work with, but in the end, I'm one of those that has really missed the EVF. And I have to say, that was one of my #1 things that made me rethink keeping the S9 was worth it or not. Now, don't get me wrong, I tried. I used the camera for months. I used the LCD with monofocus lenses and autofocus lenses. And it's a great LCD. Of course, I always had to put the brightness on the highest possible to be able to see outside. Sometimes I had to cup it a little bit. Or if I was taking out the LCD and turning it to kind of shoot from the hip or at this distance, that would help with, sunlight bouncing or not, so that I could see without a glare. But overall, I constantly, because it's muscle memory with other cameras, I constantly kept bringing it up to my face and then realizing there's no EVF, so there's no reason to do that. So overall, I think from a usability standpoint, it's a good camera. It provides excellent image quality. It was the gateway for me into Lumix, and that's where I want to go after I go through one more pet peeve that I had with this camera, and that was the build quality. It's a very small camera. It doesn't feel very solid. So whenever I put larger lenses, medium to large, it just felt very front heavy. It felt imbalanced. It felt like I was more carrying a lens, not a camera. I was holding the lens and the camera was just, to press the shutter, which is not terrible. I mean, I've used on Sony APS-C or the A7C II, that type of camera. And you do face that often, but I would say those cameras feel a lot more solid. They're magnesium. I don't know if the Lumix S9 is. It just felt very light. I know it's not weather sealed. So in terms of, usability in the end, with the variety of lenses, I felt kind of limited and worried that I would mess up the mount, or I was just holding onto the lens most of the time. So it just felt a little bit imbalanced when using larger lenses. So if usability is an issue for you, I think this is something to keep in mind now that I've used it long term, and I'm sure if you see other reviews, you'll notice that there's a lot of comment on similar things about this camera. Now, like I said, the image quality is amazing. The stabilization that you expect from Lumix is still in there. You're basically getting a 5x, 5.2x in a compact body. And that works if you're traveling. That works if you're using small lenses like the I series. I didn't have any of those. And I didn't want to spend so much money adding those compact lenses, so I stuck to manual focus, which worked okay because it does have the punch-in ability. So I think if it was my only camera to travel with and that sort of thing and be compact, I think it would be okay. But if you're like me and you're playing with camera gear all the time, there's competition. And it's hard to say that camera beats the usability and, just like the user experience day to day. Like, for example, if I'm bringing up like an A7C II, and yes, this lens is the 24-50. It is a larger lens, but because it feels more sturdy and it has the grip. Even when I added a screw-on grip to the S9, it's not compared to an actual grip like on this A7C II. So putting this up to my face, I'm still holding the camera. It's not just the lens, and I've got the EVF. And as much criticism as this EVF gets, I'm more than happy to at least have an EVF so that I can frame. And at times I will probably have to cover from the sun, but comparing this use experience to an S9, just holding it, I just much prefer this. So it just didn't make sense to keep the S9. And then if you're not into the Sony group fan club, we've also got other compact cameras. If traveling is your go-to and having a compact camera is what you're looking for, I mean, Fuji is one of the #1 compact cameras that you can get out there, even if it's APS-C. And now here is the X100 V. X100V. I've got the 50mm adapter on it, but even then, the grip is good once I add the thumb grip. But then again, the EVF is just a must, I think, when you're doing photography. You can only get comfortable for so long using a screen, shooting like this the whole time, or if you're trying to get an eye level view, having to hold the camera like this and looking at the screen. It just doesn't work in all environments, which is what the difficulty is, I think. So where am I going with this? The S9 was the gateway for me into Lumix. It was the camera that made me realize, because I had so many other features that I'm not used to having, like in my Sony cameras, it made me want to use them. And as I used those, I just ended up wanting and depending on them more. So one of those is anamorphic. I got into anamorphic when I had the S9 because it just made sense to have the de-squeeze in camera, the stabilization in camera, and it was just an ease of use. But over time, as you know, anamorphics are not small lenses. I ended up holding an anamorphic and just having a camera there. So it just didn't feel as ergonomic as I wanted it to feel once you put like a 150 from Sirui anamorphic on there, or even the Blazar lenses that are not too big. You end up just holding a lens and it just feels a little bit weird for me. And then it makes you want more buttons, more controls, and the S9 is just not that. It was designed to be compact, more straightforward, less buttons, while still having all the features. So the S9 just didn't fit the bill, but I wanted to continue using those type of features. And the other thing, they just have done a great job with the Lumix Lab, with the uses of LUTs. It feels like a well put together system with a lot of good features that I've been wanting to play with that I can't use in like a Sony. So I have anamorphic, for example, on Sony, or like the LUTs now are on Sony's, but they're only on video. So being able to use LUTs on photos is also very great. So it's not a must. That is a definite thing you should take away from this. You can take pictures with any camera. You can edit in RAW, get the final result you want. But there's something nice about having all these extra things in camera that I just learned to appreciate and want. So in the end, getting rid of the S9 was very hard, but it was at a perfect time when Lumix just released these new awesome cameras, the S1 II, the S1R2, and the S1 IIe, which are taking all of this stuff that I was new to and putting it in these crazy bodies with a bunch of capability and the ergonomics and the extra dedicated buttons. It made sense for me to go back to a full-size camera with this one, knowing that I have the A7C II and the X100V. But like I said, if the S9 is your only compact camera, it's a very capable camera and it can do everything. But if you're competing with other things, I think that's where it makes you second guess if leaving your money in that body is worth it. So I'm happy to say that that was the bridge for me to go from mostly having Sony gear to now having mostly Lumix L mount stuff and being able to just use all kinds of lenses just the way I was doing with the Sony. I'm happy to have the ability to not have to let go 100% of the Sony, so that's why I still have the A7C II, which, thinking back when I got into Sony, what I really liked about them was the compactness and the good feeling, the good autofocus, all the good things that come with Sony, the S-Log 3. When I first got my Sony camera, it was the A6000 so when it first came out. So now that the A7C II is very similar in size to that original A6000 I had used, But with all these amazing capabilities with full frame, that's just been my go-to on-the-go camera to be able to use all my manual lenses. And I know that body inside out, just like an a7 IV or a7R5 that I've used before. I just know the Sony so well that traveling, I could just do quick shots. It does what I want. But now when I'm thinking about doing more professional stuff, I have more options now. I can choose to go with my Sony. I haven't let go of several lenses. Or I can go with the L mount Lumix, which has so much to offer right now. And I know a lot of people are just hyping it up, and it feels very hyped up because it's everywhere. But I genuinely think that the Lumix camera bodies are really great. And there's a lot that I still need to learn, or there's quirks that I want to point out in a later video. Coming from Sony, mostly on autofocus, because so far image quality, I'm more than happy with what I've gotten out of the S9 and now the S1R2. I think it's more on how the autofocus works and the quirks of being in the wrong mode, or what is the right mode, if there is, or if that's something they need to update on firmware. So after using these cameras for a couple of photo shoots and jobs, I'll come back later in a different video to talk about the actual use longer term with these full cameras, the S1R2 and all those other new ones that feel the same. But overall, I just wanted to share my S9 experience. Again, great camera, it's compact, it hits the mark in a lot of ways. But when you compare it to other things, or if used to an EVF, you're using medium-sized lenses, I think it ends up defeating the compactness purpose of it. So you'd have to just stick to compact lenses or smaller lenses if you really want to use that camera, because I think it just starts to feel unbalanced and it makes you want to have a full camera. And when you see the differences in size, I mean, you're carrying massive lens with a small body. It just makes sense to have more ergonomics, an actual grip to use those lenses. Anyway, I'd like to see your thoughts. If you use the S9, did you get rid of it? Are you keeping it? I think I gave it a solid 6 months using it, and I did take it to a lot of places. I shot a lot of videos and a lot of photos with that camera. So I have no regrets in the use I got out of it. If you watch my latest videos where I got to use and test all these anamorphic lenses that I've been playing with, those were all shot with that camera. And it got me hooked, wanting that same capability and just a bigger body that I can hold properly with these larger lenses. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you are still hanging on to that S9.